Hello, my friends. Today I cannot be with you. I'm sorry, but I thought I'd do a little video for you about Albert Bandura's social cognitive theory. Now, we've been talking about behaviorism and how behaviorism is very external. It does not consider the motivations or the thoughts of the person who is having certain actions. We're just looking at their actions, whether or not we like them, whether or not they need to be changed, and then finding ways to change them. But I mean, let's be honest. One of the hard parts about behaviorism is it doesn't consider emotion. It doesn't consider our thoughts, our actions. So finally, we have Albert Bandura who comes along with this idea of social cognitive theory. And not only does he look at the external, but he starts asking questions about what could be internally motivating the external actions. Hooray! So we're going to talk today about Mr. Bandura. And our friends from The Walking Dead are coming along to join us. And my guess is that these guys have their own social theory, which is basically just to stay alive and stay away from zombies. So hopefully we can help them today. All right. As you know, we always have our vision, our mission, and our Class Connect Fab 4, and I know I'm blocking part of it. Sorry about that. But just to let you know, a couple pieces of information. Instructional cycle 1 is over, so the 10-day grace period for full credit will expire Sunday, February 26th at 11:59 p.m. And after that, anything turned in will earn a 75. So you can turn in anything from the semester. It's just that instructional cycle and that 10-day grace period that determines whether you get full credit or partial credit. But please, guys, even if you turn it in late, turn it in because a 75 sure as heck beats a 50 or a 0. We're in instructional cycle 2, which starts February the 13th, so already started, and it ends in March 26th. And the 10-day grace period for that one is incorrect on here. I will let you know what that is. Sorry about that, guys. So what's due this week? Tuesday, the 3.02 discussion was due, talking about John Watson and baby Albert. If you haven't checked into that, look into it because it's a very interesting discussion about classical conditioning and what it could be used for. Don't forget, anytime you need to set up a learner conference, please contact me. I've been having hero sessions Fridays from 10 to 11. I'm inviting some of my friends who are really struggling. And if you're invited, please do attend. Also, there's my walk-in learner conferences. They're called Raise Your Grade sessions. They're on your schedule and they're Wednesdays from 10 to 12. So if you need any help, lots of options. Please take me up on them. Don't wait till the end of the semester and then suddenly wonder why there's no time to get in and work together because I would hate for that to happen to anybody. But please let me know how I can help you because I definitely want to help out my friends. All right, so what are we going to do today? Well, we're studying Unit 3, which is Learning and Memory. And upon completing today, we have been discussing how learning takes place. We've been distinguishing between different theories of learning, classical conditioning, operant conditioning, and now social cognitive theory. We're thinking about some modern day applications of the learning. You know, we've talked about various things that we can do today. And we're going to start talking about the basic memory model today. So, lots to do. And I just wanted to make something clear to you guys. Please do not confuse these student objectives with zombie objectives. Psychology students like to study the brain. Zombies like to eat the brain. So just in case you were getting a little confused there, I wanted to sort you out. All right, the father of social cognitive behaviorism is a gentleman by the name of Albert Bandura. Let's give him a lovely round of applause. Look, he's even got a round picture, so ha 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 ha. Bandura was employed at Stanford University, and he actually met a psychologist named Robert Sears who was kind of looking at the connection between social behavior and learning and aggression. And this got Bandura interested in observational learning. Like, what do we learn based on what we see? Do we have to be taught something because there's some kind of reward or punishment, or can we watch things around us and learn from that? And you've probably heard of like the term live vicariously. Maybe you've even have some examples in your life where you've learned something by kind of watching others. Like, for example, my brother often learned lessons by watching me getting in trouble and then figuring out how to go around them. But he wrote a book called Adolescent Aggression, and people began becoming interested. Like, well, how do kids, what is aggression like for kids? And he created what he called the social learning or observational theory. He said that humans can learn by observing and modeling other people, especially people they identify with. And over time, he starts focusing on these cognitive factors like belief, self-perception, expectations, and it morphs into a theory that we call the social cognitive theory. So again, it's behaviorism, looking at your external behaviors, but it's also internal because we're looking at what kind of thoughts could model. And you'll notice it's cognitive. So a lot of my friends, I know you've seen like online, you'll see behaviorism that talks about cognitive as well. Albert Bandura is sort of the first one to put the two together and say, listen, you really got to think about the external behavior and the internal thought processes. So woohoo, go Bandura. That's right. Have a little party for Bandura here. All right. You notice my little friend over here, the bozo, also known as the bobo. There was a big question during this time. Do you think that observing violence on TV, movies, and video games leads children to behave aggressively? What do you think? You might be over here saying, nah, there's no way. Or you might be thinking, well, yeah, duh. But believe it or not, when Bandura was around in the 60s or so, people actually were just starting to wonder if there was some kind of connection. In fact, the belief was if you're a child and you watch a violent TV show, it would like release your aggression and you'd be much calmer. So people were just starting to go, wait a minute. Now, unfortunately, because this is a screencast video, I can't give you a link to the clip, but I do want you to go into the description of this video that's on the content page and make sure you grab that to see the actual experiment itself. So here's Bandura trying to figure out this question. And he creates what he calls the Bobo doll study. This is the Bobo doll right here. I know it says Bozo, but Bobo is another term for it. And it's one of those toys that once you punch it, it falls over and then it pops back up. It's kind of like a Weeble, if anybody's familiar with what Weebles are. You know, Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down. Same idea. And he drafted children between the ages of 3 to 6 years old that were enrolled at the Stanford University Nursery School. He gets 36 boys and 36 girls, and he has two experiments. In both experiments, the children were watching adults that were either behaving aggressively or kindly towards the doll. Maybe they were knocking it down, but they were just kind of eh. And so one of the big questions they're asking is, what do you think a child would do if he sees an adult behaving aggressively towards the doll? How about not aggressively? So if you want to, you could pause the video here and go watch this video that is on the content page, or you can go back to it. It's your choice, but it's a really fascinating study, and I highly encourage you to go watch it. So how does he accomplish the experiment? There were a total of 8 experimental groups. So he was really careful when he was putting this together. He has 24 assigned to a control group that receives no treatment. They don't really see the adult interact with the doll. Then the other children were divided into 2 more groups, 24 each. One group was exposed to adults having very aggressive behavior, while the other was exposed to adults having not very aggressive behavior. He checked how he divided the boys and the girls. Some children were watching a same-sex adult, so if they were female, they were watching a female adult. Some children were watching the opposite sex, so if they were female, they were watching a male. And before the experiment, Bandura wanted to assess the children's level of aggression so that he could match the groups so that they basically had an average level of aggression. So they didn't have one group that was overly aggressive versus others. So take a look for a moment. You know, we talk in experiments about variables. What kind of extraneous variables or confounding variables do you see Bandura trying to account for? So it's very important. Take a moment, pause this, read through and see if you can make a list for yourself. What was the independent variable? What was the dependent variable? And then what were the extraneous variables? So those are really important to be able to kind of quiz yourself on. I'll wait. No, I'm just kidding. Pause it if you want to do that. Click. Hold on. Sorry. There we go. So what was the results? Well, after viewing the adults who would strike and kick the Bobo doll, children would turn around and imitate that exact behavior. So this suggests that violence can be imitated by the viewers so that the children would see someone behaving poorly and they would behave aggressively or poorly. In fact, 88% of the children imitated this aggressive behavior. Now you might be saying, well, yeah, duh, they just saw it in front of them. Well, 8 months later, 40% of those same children continued to reproduce the exact same violent behavior without any prompting. They were just put into a room with the Bobo doll and they just went to town. So this obviously indicates that seeing violence can have some effect on children. Bandura and his colleagues predicted that the children in the non-aggressive group would behave much less aggressively than those in the control group, and they were correct. They also predicted boys would be much more aggressive than girls, and results indicated that yes, boys were twice as likely to be aggressive as girls. Now, unfortunately, someone didn't tell this lady that the girls are not very aggressive, but hey, I guess when you're fighting zombies, anything's okay. So in 1965, this experiment was done again, but they added a step. They rewarded or punished the violent behavior. So if an adult behaved violently towards the Bobo doll, some adults were punished, reprimanded. Other adults were rewarded, good job, way to go. And they found that the children who saw the adult model be punished were less likely to imitate. Even though they saw the adult be aggressive, it was kind of like, I don't feel like getting in trouble. The children who saw the adult rewarded actually didn't seem to be any more aggressive than normal. And it's a great question. What happens if you're playing a video game? If you stop if you get rewards in a video game for killing zombies, would you quit killing the zombies? Does a reward in a video game change your behavior? How about a punishment, like if they take away a life or take away an activity? Does that change how you play the video game? So you can see this social cognitive theory in action in your own video games when you guys are playing. Think about that. Think about the rewards and the punishments and how they encourage or discourage you if you play games. Me, I'm a big Angry Birds Friends person, but what can I say? That's just me. So when we think about the social cognitive theory, we come up with two types of learning. One is enactive learning with an E, enactive. And the idea is that you learn by doing and then experiencing the consequences of your actions. So that's the one that we're kind of most familiar with. If you don't turn in a test, you get a low grade and then you get yourself in trouble, right? So that's your consequence, is getting in trouble for not turning in the test, getting a low score. But the other kind we came up with, I'm sorry, I'm covering it. Hang on, let me move my screen, is vicarious learning. And vicarious learning says that we can learn by observing other people, but it's not just watching them. Think about it. Sometimes you watch things, hopefully not this video, and you kind of go off into la la land while you're watching it, right? But when you're really attentive, when you're constructing images in your brain, remembering, analyzing, and making decisions, you can learn vicariously. So according to Bandura, human beings have some specific abilities related to learning that sets them apart from all other species. Three characteristics unique to us. One, click, vicarious consequences. Not only can we learn by watching others, but then we can recognize consequences by watching others, and then we can make decisions and change our behavior. Two, oh, sorry, they both popped up. Self-efficacy. We can actually reflect on both the other person's behavior and our own behavior to change and make better decisions. And three is we have performance standards and moral conduct. We're basically able to regulate our own behavior. We may do something that we know is not right, but we know it's not right. Okay? Maybe you tell your mom a little lie. Oh yeah, clean my room, sure. You're thinking in your head, just don't open my closet. Hopefully nobody does that, right? But sometimes we know in our head when we're making decisions, and we have the ability to make choices in those decisions about how we're going to behave. All right. So there's 4 parts to social learning. If you're going to have social learning take place, these 4 things would happen. The first is attention. Attention has to do with our sensory capacity, our arousal level, past reinforcement. So we're more likely to acquire it if we've been reinforced for similar behaviors in the past, if we're really interested, if we're really focused. Retention, okay, I keep clicking and my mouse does nothing and all of a sudden 4 things pop up. Basically, the behavior, the symbolic coding of that behavior has somehow caught our attention. So not only were we focused on it, but then it kind of stuck with us and we went, that's something I need to remember for later. Motivation. Um, if I'm teaching you how to do something, let's say I'm teaching you to turn butter. Chances are good you're going to be like, why are we doing this? Just let me go to the store and buy some butter, right? If you're not motivated, if nothing's pushing you inside, or there's nothing outside, like your dad standing behind you saying, if you don't learn how to make butter, you never eat again. Okay, well then I'm a little more motivated, right? Not that I hope your family's doing that. And then last, reproduction, the ability of us to take that behavior and reproduce it. And you've probably tried that. Have you ever seen like a dance move in a video or someone singing a song and you're in your room by yourself and you kind of, oh, let me see if I can redo that. We reproduce it to see if we can do it ourselves. So I'll give you a little story here. We have a friend named Bobby. Bobby just started at McDonald's, and he has never worked fast food before. So his boss shows him how to work the fry machine by placing the fries in the basket, dunking them into the fryer for a specified time, removing them, and dumping them into the cooling basket to be salted. Bobby really wants to do well at this job to save enough money to buy an Xbox. Excuse me a moment. Oop, let me go this way. Sorry. Allergies. Bobby really wants to do well at this job to save enough to buy an Xbox. So he watches carefully. He remembers the fry basket, the light on the timer, the basket for cooling, etc. After a few tries, he's easily able to make fries. So let me ask you some questions. Does Bobby show attention? Well, yes, he's watching very carefully and remembering the pieces. Does he show retention? Yes, he caught those symbolic codes like the fry basket, the light on the timer, the basket for cooling. Does Bobby show motivation? Yeah, he wants to buy an Xbox, right? So he's got to make money. Does he show reproduction? After a few tries, yes, he's able to make the fries on his own. So that's how social learning has to happen. All right, my friends, so let's jump a different direction into memory. Speaking of Bobby remembering the fries, let me ask you a quick question. How many Muppets can you name? Go ahead, I'll wait. How many can you name? Anybody over here thinking, Mupp what? Does it make it easier if I give you a picture? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe some of you are thinking, well, first of all, I don't like the Muppets. Or better yet, I've never seen these guys. What are these guys? Who are these guys? Why are you asking me about them? Maybe you've never seen a TV show, or maybe you've seen one, but it was like a movie 3 years ago and you don't really remember it. Is it easier when I put a picture up for you? Maybe then you were like, oh yeah, Kermit and that pig girl, Piggy or whatever, and the brown weird bear who tells jokes. And is there something going on around you that's hard to concentrate? Maybe, there's a Dance Dance Revolution party going on in your living room. I know, I'm old. And you're thinking to yourself, I can't pay attention to these awesome dance moves and Miss Surratt's awesome class. So when we're talking about memory, we have to kind of consider the symbolism to the person who's being asked to remember. All right, look carefully. I'm going to give you a list. Look at it very carefully. Look at the list. You got a few more seconds? Are you looking? All right, list is gone. How many do you remember? Go ahead, see how many you can do in 10 seconds. I'll give you 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ding! How many did you remember? Well, typically, studies show that people tend to remember things at the beginning of the list rather than the middle or the end. Sorry, supposed to come back up. I'm sorry, guys. So the idea is that when we're trying to remember things, it's good to put the most important things up front because you're more likely to remember those. Okay, recall versus recognition. When we're trying to remember things, it's kind of good for us to know, are we trying to recall it or are we trying to recognize it? Because we can use a little bit different techniques. With recall, we're talking about going into our memory and retrieving the information. Fill in the blank tests or essay tests are a great example of recall because we have to go into our memory to figure out the answer to give an answer to the question. Recognition, on the other hand, is where we have a group of answers or we have a group of items and we have to remember which one, we have to recognize which one is correct. Multiple choice tests are a good example of recognition because we have A, B, C, or D and you have to say, okay, well, I think B is correct, and then you fill it in. Or in the case of us, we don't use paper pencil anymore, but that's okay. It's an old-fashioned picture. So let's say I show you this picture right here and I ask you, can anybody tell me what the name of this actor or the name of this character is? Quick question. Would you be using recognition or would you be using recall? Well, I didn't give you a list of names to choose from, so you're going to be using recall. Good. Recall is when you're going to go back in your memory. Of course, you may not know who this is, or if you're a big Supernatural fan like me, you're wondering why Sam and Dean's father is dressed like that. But technically, he was also on another TV show, The Walking Dead. So I guess, guys, we got to give it to him, right? So what is the process for something to get into our memory? It's a three-step process. There's encoding. First of all, the sensory information has to go into our memory system. So first it comes into our memory system. So here we have the floating Chinese gentleman adding the information into our system, like typing into a Word document. Next, we have the bit, the storage. So it's just like when you save a Word document, once you click that save button, it's become a bit and it's gone into memory retention. So there's our mental computer saves the information. So first you saw the floating Chinese guy, and then your mental computer saved the floating Chinese guy. And last you have the engram. The engram is actually the piece that we go to get from our memory. So if your teacher says write an essay, and you're thinking, okay, who was Albert Bandura? You're going into your memory to find the engram about Albert Bandura. And so we can find there's the penguin who's helpfully pulling things out and throwing them at us. Hopefully they are the correct things that they're throwing at us. You ever notice that you're on a test and you're like, okay, I can remember the song I heard last night. I can remember what I ate for breakfast 3 weeks ago. I can't remember who this Albert Bandura dude is. Yeah, well, sometimes engrams get a little confused. So when we remember something, you can see here, our sensory memory is where any sense comes to us first. So hearing me, smelling whatever your mom's making for whatever's going on in your kitchen, the sight of my beautiful face while I'm talking. No, I'm just kidding. You know, tasting whatever tasty beverage you have while you're working or food. That goes into your sensory memory. If we're really paying attention to it, it's going to go on. If we're not, it's going to go out. And most of the time, let's face it, guys, when we think about selective attention, most of what comes in our sensory memory does go out because our brains can only handle so much. But let's say you're really focusing on the fact that I am wearing the nicest blue sweatshirt you have ever seen in your life, and you're paying attention to it, and so it's going to go from your sight into your short-term memory. This is your working memory. And this isn't going to last very long. You can only keep a few bits in here at a time. So that blue sweatshirt, you know, sorry, I know it's wonderful and all, but it's only going to last so long. So most of what comes in here again goes out. But if we rehearse it, blue sweatshirt, blue sweatshirt, blue sweatshirt, blue sweatshirt, blue sweatshirt. I'm going to ask you in another class, what was I wearing during the video? It's rehearsal, and that's going to take that information from a bit to an engram where it goes into long-term storage. And when I ask you next week in class, what was I wearing during the video, you will be able to retrieve that, bring it back to short-term memory, and tell me a blue sweatshirt. That's correct. Now, I got to tell you, I love teaching students because, man, you try teaching zombies, honestly, they don't remember a darn thing you tell them. So thank goodness I'm not teaching a zombie, right? Right? No, my brain doesn't look good. Stop talking like that. I'm just kidding you. All right. Do you remember everything we talked about? I hope so. I hope it went from the bit into the engram that we can retrieve. Next week, we'll finish Unit 3 and we'll study for the 3.06 test. And next time, we're going to be talking more about memory and retrieval, which is also known as, oh, that's right, forgetting. That's what that's called. So thank you, my friends, for attending. Let me know if you have any questions.